remember the power of us. And maybe that's a better way of framing it, now that I think about it. Because yes, it is about humans, but it's not about humans in isolation. It's about what we can do as a team. So if I had that billboard and everybody would see it, that's probably why I would write. Just remember the power of us. We can do so much more together than we ever can alone.
And it's so true, and it works in every level of the human experience. Welcome to the Leaders in Tech podcast. I am your host, David Manilla. I have created this channel to honor people in technology that are groundbreaking this world with better things, better technology. And this podcast is specifically for the leaders that are helping to do that with their team, because I researched for a long time and I couldn't find anything that were focusing on the actual leadership, not the technology itself. And it was a huge misservice in the community, because if it wasn't because of the leadership, we wouldn't have any technology, because technology is made by humans. So I started to do this, and now I'm scouring the world to find the best technologies, the best leaders in technology that I can find. And today we have one of them, a brilliant mind that is really making an impact. Claus, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, David. Thanks for the invitation.
For the audience, can you please tell me your full name? Where do you live? And what do you do for a living?
Absolutely, I can. So Claus Torp Jensen, that's originally a Danish name. It's not where I live anymore. I live in Seattle in the US, and I'm the Chief Innovation Officer for Teladoc Health.
Can you tell me again the company name?
Teladoc Health.
And what do they do?
We provide virtual care solutions. So think of us not just as, having a very brief conversation with a doctor. We actually have a variety of clinical services we provide. So we do, the acute episodic. If you have something going on and you just want to see a doctor on short notice, we do that. You can have us as your primary care physician. You can get mental health services. You can choose to have your mental health professional that you just have an ongoing relationship with be one of ours. We also help people manage chronic conditions, primarily diabetes, hypertension, and obesity. And finally, we have a piece of our business where we sell technology to hospitals and health systems. So if you're a hospital health system and you want to drive virtual care for your patients, we can help you with the technology platform for that. In terms of scale, we serve about 90 million Americans. Not necessarily every day, but there's 90 million Americans that have access to one or more of our services. So that's a pretty good chunk of the population.
This podcast is brought to you by ISU Corp. Are you having trouble with your software projects? Is there a project that's taking too long, or a technology you can't handle? We can help. We are ISU Corp, experts in custom software since 2005. With almost 20 years of experience, we can solve any technical problem, from new businesses to satellite software. We've done it all. Let us turn your ideas into reality. Learn more about how we can help by visiting us at www.isucorp.ca. Your solution starts here.
That's a very big number. Even worldwide, most countries don't have that many people.
That's true.
Right? So I live in Canada. We have 45 million people in Canada, to give you an idea, right?
Yes.
So your role in your company, you are the chief information officer?
Chief Innovation Officer.
Innovation.
And the difference, in some ways it's subtle, in other ways it sort of matters. But it's similar to a CTO, CIO, chief digital kind of role. And I actually have a chief information officer who reports to me. Jeff, he takes care of the corporate solutions and all the IT operations, etc. I have a chief technology officer that reports to me. He builds all of the technology for the products. And then there's a data analytics team, and that's also part of my organization. So all the stuff that we deliver either to the company or to the people we serve on the outside, every piece of technology, data, insight, analytics comes out of one part of my team or another.
That's beautiful. So in order to be able to serve so many people, how many people do you need in an organization to actually pull that off?
That is an interesting question, because how many people do you need always becomes, well, do you really need that many? So I have something like, if you include the staff augmentation where we partner with people around us, something like 1,700 people in my organization.
That's fantastic. So, Claus, to get there, I know it's not easy, especially when you work for a larger organization like yours. So let's go back in time and analyze, where were you when you were finishing high school, and what was your decision making back then? What did you want to do after you graduated?
That's a long trip back in time. So when I finished high school, I had actually already chosen sort of the direction of where I would go when I went to college. That was a decision I made in the 8th grade. This sounds like silly, because you can't possibly in the 8th grade decide what you're going to do when you get to college. It kind of did, because I loved the notion of computer technology, as we called it at the time. This is like early. You're talking 1982. I had my own first personal computer. It wasn't much compared to modern standards, but I met someone who had just finished a computer science degree, and he was sort of in the first class of computer science degrees in the country. And I decided that was what I was going to do. So where I was when I was done with high school is I was heading for a computer science degree at one of the colleges in Denmark. It ended up with a PhD in computer science, so at least I did what I said I would.
So you actually went all the way down to becoming a doctor.
And I did. I don't use that title very often, but I do have a PhD.
Beautiful. And that speaks a lot about you, because people that go through that time in schooling and the hardship of becoming to getting your doctorate is not easy. So people would love to be called Dr. Claus, for example, and you're not doing that, which means you are one of the most humble doctors that I know. You see? So thank you for that.
So, after that, it was like, you got your PhD in computer science. Many people that take that path think that they're going to be an academic forever. I started that career. Some stuff happens in your life. You have to make different choices, and I ended up taking a software developer job with a bank in Denmark, where I lived at the time. So that was sort of how my professional career got started. If you look at how it played out, I don't think anyone would have predicted that.
Incredible. Now, how was the process? Like, you went through your bachelor's, then you did your master's right away, and then you went right into your PhD?
Yeah, there was a special program that the Danish government ran where you could go directly from your bachelor's, and they would do a combination, sort of, master's and PhD programs. So you really did, 3.5 years, and then it was a 4.5 year program on top of that. But it was 8 years in total to get to the PhD. So lots of stuff around it. I mean, you do some math, you do some statistics, there's some supporting fields that you have to get into as well. But I actually studied for my PhD, of all things, that's not what I do today. But I did theoretical computer science, semantics of parallel systems. So if you wanted to start reasoning about a piece of software you would send to the moon, I was working on systems for how could you reason about software how it would behave when you put it out into the world. That's not what I ended up doing, but that was what my PhD was about.
That's incredible. And you ended up as a software developer. Incredible, right?
Yeah, that was how I paid for college. I had software development jobs as I was going through college. So I started out writing software for a transportation company, which is kind of interesting. So you want a good story?
Yes,
how you learn about quality assurance. So there's a long story about how I got to write software for this transportation company. But one day, the gentleman who owned the company said, and the next thing I want you to do is I want you to write, me a salary system. I want to make sure that we sort of optimize how we pay our drivers and spend less people on it. I had no idea how you build a salary system. I didn't even know how they did payroll. So it was like, you start interviewing the people in the office and you learn how they're doing it, and you write the software to do something similar. And You give them a screen where they could put in the data from the timestamps, which the drivers would do. And it all worked great, I thought. Then one day I was sitting in the office and there was these 3 truck drivers coming into the office. They were a little bit larger than me. At the time, I wasn't 20 yet, and I'm not a big guy, mate. So they were a little bit larger than me. And then they asked the people in the office, where's that Claus guy? Pointing to me sitting over there. Just don't do that again. I'm not quite sure what I did. Make sure you pay us right. Oops. Might have had a little bit of a quality problem in how I calculated their pay. They did not appreciate that. So the way you learn how that quality is important is if you don't get it right, you're going to get beaten up by the truck drivers.
Yeah. It's beautiful. And nowadays software developers have all this advantage to have SQA people dedicated to consumer code, and they get lazy. So, as I run a software development company. That's what I do for my main business. And these guys know they have to write unit tests. They have to do their own testing. If the testers find codes, if the testers find bugs that they made that is obvious, they get penalized. Because, I learned early in my career that the longer it takes for a bug to be found and fixed, the more expensive it becomes.
That is the trick. The longer it takes, the more expensive it becomes.
Right? So at the same time, I make sure these guys have the ability to write fast code. And I know it's not their job to have, something compiled perfectly and has all the business rules completely done at the same shot. But having that attitude is great. So you learn a great lesson right at the beginning.
Yeah, very early. And there was me and there was me, right? That was it. The entire software development team was me. So you got to learn a little bit of everything.
You learn a lot, actually. When you work for a small shop, you have to learn a lot. And then those skills get utilized when you move on in your career, right?
Great.
So your first professional job after university, who was that for?
That was for Danske Bank, which is the largest Danish bank. And it was a software developer job. I started working on systems that would basically, digitize credit card slips. It's a long time ago. We did credit card slips. But it ended up, I was with the bank for 13 years, but I had like 9 different jobs over those 13 years, ending up actually with a C-suite job that I sort of stumbled into. At the ripe old age of 32, I became the chief architect for the largest bank in the country, with a technology department of about 3,000 people.
That's incredible. At 32, eh?
32. So it was like the CIO had been to a conference and he had heard about architecture. And I had become the go-to person. This is another thing. Sometimes you just become the go-to person for whatever they don't know what to do with. So I was his go-to person. And he just called me to his office and said, "Hey, Claus, I need a favor." I said, "That's great, Peter. What do you need this time?" And he said, "Be our new chief architect." What's that? I don't know. That's not your job. Because he had been to a conference, so he needed an architect team. And as we now know, a chief architect job is interesting, right? A C-suite job, but it was very early in that. But think about it, you get thrown into, you now have the responsibility for architecture for a 3,000 person organization, 60,000 people in the bank, and figure it out. I didn't have a team. I didn't have any architects. It was like me.
That's resourcefulness. So if he trusted you with this, it's because he knew you were resourceful and you could figure it out, right?
That's what it means to be a go-to person. You get to the point where if you've demonstrated enough times that people can give you hard problems and you'll do something meaningful with them, you become their go-to person. And the next thing he needed was a chief architect.
When I was a senior programmer, one of my bosses, the bosses that I had, like, God bless their souls, they were so impactful in my growth. One of them sat me down and he said, "David, you have 2 choices." I was working for a large company, a telecommunications company. And he says, "You could go on the architecture role and you can actually become a chief architect, but that requires more technology, or you could go on the business side and become a leader." And I said, I want to be an architect because, I will look at my chief architect as, the Taj Mahal, right? And I was actually building architectures already that had to be approved by other people. So he told me, don't answer me right now. Take some time. And I did. And after carefully thinking about it, I came back and asked him, why do you give me this choice? If I love writing code and I love building software and I love architecting systems. And he said, well, because you have this personality where you could actually impact people with your leadership, but you could also do great in the actual technology. And he ended up going on the business side. So I never became, I did senior architecture roles, but never in a C-suite position. But that led me to start leading other people and learning soft skills that I didn't have. So it was actually tougher for me. So thank you for sharing that, because now you are actually in a C-suite position being forced to take on a leadership role that you didn't even know what to do. So tell me, how did you figure that out? How did you build that office? And how did you start adding value? Because your boss, he needed to see that you were adding value, right?
Well, you start talking to people, right? You start reading when you get your hands on, and you do what you think is right, and you do whatever experience you have. The reality is, I did the tools, I did the processes, I did the methods, it's all the things that you're supposed to do according to the book. And I messed it up. So 2 years later, everything was established. I'm like a year and a half, almost 2 years into this whole gig as a C-suite executive thrown into it. I have a team of about 20 people at the time. I hired some good people. We had a network around us of about 100 people that were solution architects spread out in the technology organization. And people just made bad decisions. And I asked them, why do you make that decision? Because that's what the method said I should do. And there's another one of those pivotal moments, and I can count about 5 in my career, where, same as you have a choice to make. You can say, and it's easy, you can't be that smart. You weren't listening to me, and of course you shouldn't make that decision. But that's the one choice you can make. Or the other choice you can make is say, I didn't help you enough. But there's something in what I did that didn't get you. You're a smart individual. You're capable. I haven't given you what you need to make good decisions. I chose the latter. So what I had messed up was I'd forgotten the human. It's sort of lesson number. It's a quality assurance, a long time ago. Right? Lesson number 2: people are people, and look, good people will rise to the occasion if you help them think differently about a problem. And that was what I hadn't done. I hadn't actually added the learning journey ingredients. Look, it's an organizational cultural change to implement an architecture function in an organization that has never done it before. But that's not something that you get taught in college. And as you get thrust into it, you either choose to adapt and learn and become someone who understands people, culture change, culture transformation, or you fail. So chose the latter and found my sort of teaching gene, which is something I've been doing on and off ever since, personally. Actually, I take a personal interest and joy in running learning sessions with whatever team that I'm leading, simply to give back and share some of the stuff I've learned. At the time when I did the first time, it was to fix the mess I made, which is how to help people think better around architecture. And I had more experience than anyone else, so I thrust myself into it. So that was another one of those pivotal moments, and I fixed it. And look, I stayed with the bank for another 5, 6, 7, 8 years after that, and did a lot of other additional things in addition to being the chief architect. But you kind of come to that kind of moment, and the easy answer is it wasn't my fault. But you know what? In most cases, kind of was something you either did or didn't do that led to it, because good people will rise to the occasion if you give them the right tools.
Yeah. And how beautiful is that? And that shows, again, go back to being humble, right? And I call it servant leadership. Mm-hmm. You could have had the choice to blame it on the person that didn't do the right choice. Maybe it was a logical thing that they could actually see that wasn't the right decision, even though you didn't provide the tools. And you could have said, it's your fault. but you took it on yourself to realize, why did I do wrong for this person to take the wrong choice and you correct it?
Right.
That takes humility, because it's accepting that you are wrong.
I think it takes
checking to see what was your mistake.
I mean, it certainly takes the courage to self-reflect, right? And admit the fact that nobody is perfect. Right? Life is a learning journey, and look, we all mess up from time to time. I don't actually think that's what defines you. To your point, what defines you is what you do when you mess up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a man of faith. I'm a born again Christian, so I read the Bible, and I also read the leadership books. And this servant leadership, this whole movement has been in society for a long time. So if you look back and you see how everything works, if you are actually a true servant of your employees, a true servant of the people that you lead, that's a paradigm shift for culture change.
It totally is. And what I find interesting is then as time passes, and I think society changed as well, there's still many elements of what people call servant leadership, which I consider just fundamental to how I show up as a leader. But at the same time, you get into certain roles, and the last 3 I've had were of that sort, where at the same time, you also need to be the visionary that points out we're going in this direction. And sometimes you have to be willing to push like hard, right, to get people to move in a certain direction. I don't actually think the two are mutually exclusive. I mean, so normally sometimes people think about servant leadership as being reactive. I think there is a way of marrying that ethos with still being pushy about the outcomes that we need to drive. So I think you can do both.
You have to do both. Servant leadership doesn't mean that you're just going to be there to fix other problems. No, you still have to lead. And a leader gets blamed for the result of the entire team, right?
That is true.
It's your responsibility. So that's why you are the chief innovation officer. You know what steps to take, and you are going to take the risk of getting all the blame on you. That you have to lead, right? But you can lead in a way that you are enabling your team, not blocking your team, right? It's beautiful.
that was at least 2 life lessons, right? So I have about a handful, but that's sort of it.
What happened after that, bank?
What happened after that? You get to, I'm getting close to 40. I've been with the bank for 12 years. Well, you have a C-suite role in the biggest technology organization in the country, and it kind of becomes interesting to ask the question, what's next?
Exactly.
Next became find the bigger pond. So much back and forth between myself and my wife, whom I love dearly, and she's been with me for many years. And we decide that next is going to be the United States. Right?
Oh, so what you mean a bigger pond is a bigger country?
A bigger in technology environment, right? So bigger pond was literally, it was sort of reaching the limit of what I would do next in Denmark, and the answer became find a bigger country, and find the bigger challenges. Which kind of sounds weird because you making it to the C-suite once is like really hard. So I made it to the C-suite once, and I gave it all up to move to the US and take a job with IBM, which most people would say is like bonkers, because it's like, why would you do that? It felt right because I wanted to take on bigger challenges in a bigger country and have a different kind of effect on the world. So I quit my job. We sold our house, we moved everything, including the kids, and I changed from finance to technology. So I literally took a job. It was a leadership position, but it wasn't C-suite, with IBM, and started helping IBM develop better products and help maybe the clients answer the question. I bought a lot of technology. Now what? So what's fascinating about that role is it gives you an opportunity to see like dozens or even hundreds of very large organizations struggling with the question, what do I do with the technology to drive meaningful business outcome? And I actually think that experience has served me extremely well in the rest of my career. I did hit a snafu. Remember, like 5 life lessons? There was a life lesson from IBM. So about 4.5, 5 years into my 7-year tenure with IBM, one of my good colleagues, we had traveled together many times, and we had a long day with the client. We were waiting for the client dinner. We were out having a glass of wine, all of a sudden out of the blue, she says, you know what, Klaus, you're being an idiot. Whoa. Didn't see that one coming. So, you know, oops, I know, what did I do now? Yeah, you're just being an idiot. Yeah, I'm not getting it. So as a pushed her to tell me what it was. Well, it's because you tell people the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. But that's my job. I mean, I'm the expert. What I do. Yeah, that's why you're being an idiot. Apparently, I'm pretty dumb right now because I'm not really getting it. Don't tell them the whole truth. You scare them. And they will respect you forever, but they don't want to talk to you again because you literally scared them with everything you know. And this is not one of those moments where you can make a choice. Like I could say, well, they're not being receptive what I'm telling them, and I have to tell them the whole truth. Or you can say, damn, I'm not supposed to say damn. So damn, that was like, so I need to change the way that I communicate. And I need to tell them the truth and nothing but the truth. But maybe I need to tell them a story. Instead of telling them all the stuff I know, maybe I need to tell them a story about what they need to know. So that third life lesson was when I decided to become a storyteller. I had no idea what it meant to be a storyteller, by the way. It was kind of like you almost thrust into being a chief architect. But you make a choice and then you pursue it. So I wanted to learn to become a better storyteller. That was sort of my third life lesson that took me through my IBM time.
That's beautiful. You know, going back to that whole mentality, right? It reminds me of parables, right? Storytelling is the fastest way for you to communicate your point to somebody else, especially if they are not in technology or the technological level is not as vast as yours, right?
Well, what's really fascinating is it's become my passion now. I mean, I actually try to teach people about storytelling and my own experiences. So I run a storytelling class for my team just to share some of my own experiences and what it can do for you. So, you know, try to become a storyteller.
Yeah, because you make it more human, right? You make it more human, you make it more real. And then people realize they can just relax and say, okay, we can overcome this because it already happened to him until I was this, right? So what was that aha moment where you realized you needed to become a storyteller? Like, who told you that, or how did you figure that out?
It was actually right in that moment. You know, I didn't know how to put it into words, but it was that conversation with my colleague that said I have to change the way I communicate, and I started looking at how other people communicate. Right? So, without knowing consciously at the time that what I was going to pursue was, you know, a storytelling flavor to how I communicate. It was really that decision in that moment that I had to change it. Now, it took a while before you become conscious enough about what it means. You change your interaction style, you learn how to storytell. So I'd say that was a process. It took time. But I really think it was the same as when I sort of messed up, like back at the bank. It was really a pretty sort of in the moment kind of thing that says you have a choice to make. But you need to choose to get stubborn and say, no, I do what I need to do. Or you can acknowledge, and that's the first decision, I have to change, and then you do the work on what that looks like.
Beautiful. So you corrected the path. How long did it take for you to see the change in your approach in communication?
It took more than a year. I mean, it might even have taken two. And I'd say in many ways, it's a lifelong journey. I mean, being a good storyteller is something you continue to refine over time. And I know I'm a better storyteller now than I was back when I left IBM. And so there's no question that this is something you continue to learn about. But it took at least a year, maybe two, before I was to the point where I was comfortable being on stage, quote unquote, and not being scripted. The one of the things I realized when storytelling is the more you script yourself, the less genuine it comes across, right? So part of a different style of interaction is you need courage. And that courage includes putting yourself out there, but it also includes you need the courage to not be perfect.
Yeah.
But just be human. And look, I make tons of mistakes, but I've become comfortable with the fact that I will do the best I can, but I'll accept the fact that I'm not perfect. And it's more important to me to be human than it is to be perfect.
Wow. Just with that alone, this has been an incredible podcast episode. Thank you for that truth, because that's a huge key. For me, I think life is a path of perfection. But the only way you can actually get better at it, by the way, you will never become perfect. You just want to aspire to be as perfect as you can possibly be in your lifetime. But the only way to grow in this path is to acknowledge that you make mistakes. Right? It's be honest. It's funny because you're talking about storytelling and all this, and that's why I don't sell any of my guests. I will never sell them questions, because I want to talk from their heart, because that's where honesty comes out, right?
Exactly right.
Look what was happening now. Like this is like beyond leadership wisdom. This is life wisdom, right? How long did you stay at IBM, and what did you do after that?
I stayed with IBM for 7 years, and then I joined Aetna. So that was another industry shift. Right? I went from finance to technology and now into healthcare. Right? So I got into healthcare in the beginning of 2015. And it was another one of those things that just happened, right? Because I was working with Aetna on some stuff as an IBMer. And, I was doing, something very specific, right, for the CIO of Aetna. And I never met her before. But I'd done a red team review of a pretty major investment that she and her team was about to make. And I went through the readout, which was basically in Hartford in the headquarters on the sixth floor in her office. It was the weirdest thing, because she started the meeting when you can assume everybody read the report she had, because she was ex-military, so she was prepared. Everybody else in the room, I'm not sure they did, but it didn't matter because the boss said, we read the report. So then she continued. So I don't want to talk about the report. This is like when you're with one of the bigger clients of the company you work for, and they throw you out into the deep end and saying, I don't want to talk about the report. Like, I wonder what you're going to talk about. So she wanted to talk about all these choices that she was sort of facing. It became a very wide-ranging conversation. And throughout the conversation, we talked about getting some more of my time, talking with my up chain in IBM. And since you threw out this thing about needing a new CTO, I don't know quite how it happened, but we ended up being the last two people out of the room. And I said, hey, that CTO thing, what's that all about? And she told me she was about to push the button for an external search for a CTO. And then she looks at me and says, so are you interested?
Oh, wow.
And in that kind of moment, you have exactly 2 seconds to figure out whether you're going to say yes with conviction. And if you don't, it's a no.
Yeah.
So I said yes. Because I loved Aetna as a company. I really liked the culture. I liked the people. And that was a Friday morning. Wednesday afternoon, she gave me an offer that was kind of hard to refuse. Wow. So I became the CTO of Aetna. I went from, Friday morning to Wednesday afternoon. I was all of a sudden working for a different company. I went out and told my wife, Annie, I think I just got hired by Aetna. It was a little bit crazy. But it was the right decision. I got into healthcare, and I think we did some amazing things in the time I was with Aetna.
Isn't it beautiful that leadership skills transfer between industries really easily?
I think that is absolutely beautiful. I agree with you. Right.
It's funny, because in my organization, we do finance, healthcare, we do 4 or 5 strong industries. And I told my people, listen, leadership is leadership. And we have skill sets in all those industries. That's why we can do this. Okay? How long do you stay at Aetna?
Stayed for something like 5-6 years. Aetna was acquired by CVS Health, so it depends on how you count. Right? I was the CTO for Aetna. I became the CTO for CVS Health as a whole M&A kind of thing. And how do you end up with that job? And look, that's a Fortune 5 company. So becoming a CTO for a Fortune 5 company, most people would say that's not easy. I wouldn't say it was not an easy journey. I'll agree with that. And then I decided, that I would actually try to make cancer care better. Most people would have said that was like totally bonkers. I've done a few decisions in my career where people said that's just insane. If you made it to a C-suite role in a Fortune 5 company, why would you go work for an academic medical center? Like that doesn't live and breathe technology. But who hasn't had cancer close to their family? And when somebody contacts me and said, do you want to help us meet people earlier so they can get better treatment and fewer people die, and make them feel better during treatment because we think we can do more in the intersection between in-hospital and home. And then after you're done with the treatment, how do we help people stay in touch so they don't feel abandoned and lonely, because that happens. And we know that when you had cancer treatment, be that chemo or radiation therapy, you are at greater risk for recurring cancer. So we got to stay in touch with you, but we can't have you come into the hospital all the time. That doesn't work either. So that challenge of how do you manage the life cycle, the life, I guess, right, of a cancer patient from very early stage to very late stage, that was just something I had to do. My timing was horrible because I joined an academic medical center, Memorial Sloan Kettering, with headquarters in New York City right before COVID-19 shut down the city. So it became a little bit more of a bargain than perhaps I had expected. Right, it was from ashes to fire, but I still think that was meaningful to me, right, to try to make cancer care better, because who hasn't seen cancer in the family?
Well, my wife just had cancer in her throat this year. So it's very fresh in my family. And the treatment was exceptional. Thank God she only had to do one round of radiation and went away because it was at the beginning stage. My mom died from cancer when she was 33 years old, pancreatic cancer. So I understand exactly what you mean. And this is why I love doing what I do, because there is a higher purpose in life than being the top C-suite executive of the largest company in the world, if you think you can do something better for humanity in another job. Because it's not just about the position and the money and the travel. It's about making an impact to other people that are suffering. This is what I do.
I believe it.
Right?
So, 2 years working on the hybrid space between in-person care and, virtual care, taking an academic medical center through COVID, doing lots of interesting things like, figuring out how to get enough telco bandwidth to even run stuff when people went home, ran out of outbound phone lines because everybody called for the phone, didn't have enough, call center seats. So we took some offices and turned into impromptu call centers, figure out how to feed 50,000 mice in the research building. That's not something you would think about, but how do you feed 50,000 mice in a research building when all the researchers got sent home? That's an interesting problem, right? So how do you, there was just all kinds of stuff that you don't think about. When you send 40% of the staff of a hospital home, it just, you got to figure out how that works. Mm-hmm. And then Teladoc Health came along and said, okay, so, you're doing good work in cancer, but we have this vision of delivering a different kind of care across mental health, primary care, and chronic conditions that will get at what ails. If you look at it through a population health lens, those are the three things you have to address. If you can meaningfully change the care model for the better around primary care, mental health, and chronic conditions, you're getting at 80% of what ails the world population. And those 80%, in many cases, drive some of the more serious consequences of not being healthy. So that also became something I just had to do. So that was a shorter stint at Memorial Sloan Kettering. It's somewhat unusual for my career, but this opportunity I just had to do.
Beautiful. Mental health, I believe, is the number one reason why the other diseases materialize in your body. Because everything starts here. And if you look at the stress level that people go through, it starts depleted their immune system, and then everything else gets bad. So just with mental health alone, you're making a huge impact.
And the funny thing about mental health is, and I think this is true, especially for people that struggle with mental health, sometimes just getting out of their home is hard. And having the ability to provide you the same quality of care, and that's important. It's got to be the same quality of care, and I believe this can be done. Providing the same quality of care virtually in your home is actually a very, very meaningful, not just lever for convenience, but there's a lot of people that get care now that wouldn't get care if they had to go outside their home. That's one of the biggest drop-off points for people that need assistance with mental health, is that they just don't get to the point where they go out of their home once a week to go to an appointment.
Incredible. Wow. Out of your entire career, what has been the biggest learning lesson?
It's always about people. Yeah, I don't have a better way of putting it. I mean, if you look at all these learning moments, it is always about people. Now, in many different ways, but it's always about people. It's about who you are as a human. It's about how you help your team become better. It's how you help the bigger team, which is your company or institution, become better. And ultimately, I'd like to think that some of us are fortunate enough to help people live better lives, right? and literally make the world better. So when people ask me, why do you go to work? That's my answer. People, and people. Right? And I want to help create a better team. I want to help create a better institution. And I really want to look for jobs that let me also help create a better world. And then I usually say, and I know that sounds like a cliche, but it's really not. I mean, that is why I go to work.
Mm-hmm. It's beautiful. I bet that you haven't had much problems on finding purpose in life. Have you?
No, that's true. There are plenty of organizations out there that fit the criteria. You just have to look for it.
Right. And for the audience, life is short. When you get to be our age, the worst thing that you can do is look back and have regrets just because you were chasing the dollar, right? Or the position or the ego or whatever it is. So I made that mistake. And that's why I'm trying to do the best I can to give that impact that I didn't give. I mean, don't get me wrong, like all the things that I've done in my life have, help organizations move forward society. But I may have done wrong choices in my career just based on money, for example, right? And it's not the right way. I mean, money is important, but you have to weigh everything else, because at the end of the day, we come naked to the world and we live without nothing.
Right? I mean, that's true. And the only thing I would add is, if you like where you ended up, then the journey was what it needed to be to get you to that point. Mm-hmm. There's a life lesson in that as well. You accept the fact that if you truly like where you ended up, that's just how it came out. I mean, we all have moments in our career where maybe we would redo it, but when people ask me that question, some of the people I mentor, is like, I always ask them, what's important to you in life? Mm-hmm. And what's important to you in a job? And if that's where you ended up, it was pretty good.
Yep. Claus, thank you so much for your time. The hour went by so fast. Let me ask you one last question before we end the podcast. And it will be lovely to have you back whenever you have some more time to do a second episode, because we have so much more things to learn from your brilliant mind. But let me ask you the last question. If you had access to a billboard in front of the busiest highway on earth, what would you write in it?
Right on it. I don't think I've ever gotten that question. It was a really good one. I might write something along the lines of "Remember to be human." Mm-hmm. It is. I know it's a strange choice. If I had to choose something different, I might write "Remember the power of us." Maybe that's a better way of framing it, now that I think about it. Because yes, it is about humans, but it's not about humans in isolation. It's about what we can do as a team. So if I had that billboard and everybody would see it, that's probably where I would write. And just to remember the power of us. We could do so much more together than we ever can alone.
And it's so true. And it works in every level of the human experience. My dad, before he passed away, he always told me every country has the government they deserve.
Mhm.
Because the power is in us. Right. So as society, we actually choose. We have the power to choose, regardless if he's a nasty dictatorship. If no people don't like it, they change it. And we've seen it all over and over in history. Now imagine in a team scenario where we're actually trying to do something better. It's always as a group. And you're a clear example that to get where you are, you need a whole bunch of people to help you get there. Right?
Yes, you do. That's true.
Well, thank you so much for your time. God bless you, brother. If people would like to ask you more questions, find out more about Teladoc or yourself, where can they find you online?
They can always find me on LinkedIn. So I'm not that hard to find. I do read my LinkedIn messages, not always every day, but they can find me on LinkedIn.
Beautiful. Claus, thank you so much for being on the show. Have a beautiful rest of the week.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you for tuning in to the Leaders in Tech podcast. Check in next week to keep learning how to use technology and leadership to change the game. See you next time.